teenage girl went out for a swim late at night with her friends, but she never came back. Everyone thought she drowned. For 2 years, her family searched for her, but nothing ever turned up, no body, no clues, nothing. Then one day, her car was found at the bottom of a steep ocean cliff miles away from the beach. Now everyone is asking the same question: what really happened that night? It was the start of summer in Crescent Bay, a small coastal town with quiet streets, sleepy diners, and a beach that came alive after dark. For most of the teens in town, the beach wasn't just a place to tan or swim, it was freedom. It was where secrets were told, where first kisses happened, and where trouble quietly brewed under the sound of waves. On the night of June 23rd, 17-year-old Mariah Blake left her house around 10:45 p.m. She told her mom she was going to a sleepover at her best friend Chloe's house. Her mom barely looked up from folding laundry, just nodded and reminded her to call if she needed anything. That would be the last time anyone saw Mariah Blake alive. Mariah didn't go straight to Chloe's. She met up with Chloe and 2 other friends, Jaden and Erica, at North Point Beach. It was a hidden stretch of sand past the lifeguard zone, the kind of place only locals knew. It was quiet, pitch black at night, and dangerous if you didn't know the rocks. They brought snacks, towels, a cheap Bluetooth speaker, and a cooler filled with soda and stuff they weren't supposed to be drinking. The moon was out, high and full, casting silvery light on the water. The waves were calm, just rolling softly against the shore like they were sleeping too. Mariah was in a good mood, she always was. She had long curly hair, always tied up in a bun, and this confident way of walking that made people turn. Everyone liked her. She was smart, funny, and talked fast when she got excited. She was planning to leave for college in the fall. She'd gotten into a state university, the first in her family to go. But that night wasn't about school or the future. It was about music, laughter, and feeling alive. The 4 of them danced in the sand, sang along badly to songs, and dared each other to go into the water. Just after midnight, Mariah decided she wanted to swim. Not just wade in, but really swim past the shallows, out where it was darker and colder. "You're crazy," Chloe told her. "It's freezing." "I need to wake up," Mariah laughed. "Come on, just 5 minutes." Chloe hesitated, but Mariah was already stripping down to her bathing suit and running toward the waves. Jaden and Erica stayed behind, lying back on the towels. Chloe finally followed, but only stepped into the water knee-deep. Mariah swam out farther and farther. Her voice echoed faintly back to them, shouting, "This feels amazing." Then nothing. Chloe kept calling her name. "Mariah, Mariah," no answer. At first, they thought she was joking, trying to scare them. But 5 minutes passed, then 10. Jaden stood up. "She's probably messing around, hiding behind the rocks." Erica's voice cracked. "No, she wouldn't." They all ran along the shore, yelling her name. Chloe dove in, searching. The moonlight shimmered off the water, but there was no sign of her. Not a splash, not a cry thing. By 1:30 a.m., they were calling 911. The police arrived fast, then the search boats, then the helicopters. For 3 days, they dragged the water, searched the cliffs, knocked on doors. Divers went down. Sniffer dogs combed the surrounding forest areas. Nothing. Her towel and flip-flops were still on the sand. Her car, a white Honda Civic, was parked where she left it, near the narrow dirt path leading to the beach. The story hit the news. Teen disappears after midnight swim. Her mother begged for help on TV. Her father, who worked on boats, said he knew that water like the back of his hand. If she drowned, they'd have found something. But there was no trace, no body. No clothes, no phone. Rumors started like they always do in small towns. Some said she ran away. Some whispered about drugs. Others said she hit her head on a rock and the current pulled her away. The current at Crescent Bay could be unforgiving if you drifted too far, even on calm nights. Still, people said it didn't make sense. Why would Mariah swim that far out alone? Why didn't she scream? Why was her phone missing, but her car left behind? 2 weeks after the disappearance, the police officially changed the case from search and rescue to recovery. They didn't expect to find her alive anymore. Her family refused to hold a funeral. Her mother left her bedroom untouched. Chloe dropped out of school 2 months later. Jaden moved out of town. Erica stopped answering texts. Life kept moving in Crescent Bay, but not for the Blakes. Then something strange happened on the 1-year anniversary. A woman walking along the edge of the cliff near Ashridge Point, about 9 miles from North Point Beach, thought she saw something shining from below. She reported it to the local Coast Guard, who sent a drone out. They saw nothing. It was written off as sunlight on rocks. Just a false alarm. But the Blake family never stopped asking questions. Her father kept a logbook. Every tip, every sighting, every small detail that didn't add up. He started walking the cliffs weekly, eyes sharp, scanning the water and rocks. On the 2nd anniversary of her disappearance, her mother didn't attend the vigil. She sat at home alone with a bottle of wine, staring at the news coverage on mute. She hated how they always showed the same photo, Mariah in a red dress, smiling, head tilted. She wanted people to remember her voice, her walk, her stupid jokes. Not just the smile. That same week, something was found at the bottom of Ashridge Point Cliff. It wasn't found by a search party. It wasn't found by police. It was found by a teenage boy with a drone and a TikTok account. He'd been filming waves crashing against the rocks for a slow-motion video when his drone caught a white shape wedged deep between the rocks, half covered in seaweed. A car, the front windshield shattered, the body rusted and salt-stained, license plate still attached. It was Mariah Blake's Honda Civic. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The news spread like fire. A car had been found below Ashridge Point, wedged between jagged rocks where waves hit hard and often. It had taken 2 hours for rescue workers to lower themselves down the cliffside. From above, you could barely see it. The thick brush along the cliff edge and the shape of the rocks made it almost invisible. But when the team got closer, the truth became undeniable. The rusted white Honda Civic was still holding onto a crushed license plate. Mariah Blake. Her parents were notified before the media. Her father drove to the cliff in silence. He didn't speak the entire ride. Her mother refused to leave the house. At the scene, police roped off the area. Drones flew above, documenting everything. Officers took pictures. Evidence markers were placed on the ground up top and on the narrow path leading toward the edge. A crane was called to lift the car, but it would take hours just to prep the site. From the road, onlookers gathered, neighbors, classmates, strangers who remembered the story. They all asked the same question quietly. How the hell did that car get there? Back at the station, Chloe was called in for questioning again. This time, the officer leaned forward and didn't bother hiding his frustration. When you said you all walked to the beach that night, you never mentioned the car. We didn't take her car, Chloe said. Her voice cracked, dry from nerves. She parked it on the cliff trail and walked with us. We took the path down. Why would she park that far up? Chloe hesitated. Because we didn't want cops checking the lot. We had beer. And none of you saw her leave after the swim? No. She never came back. He stared at her a long time. I swear, we thought she drowned. The investigator didn't believe her, but there was no proof yet. Chloe left the station shaking. Outside, she threw up in the bushes and didn't even try to hide it. Inside the recovered car, the front was caved in. The roof was dented, and every window had shattered. Seaweed tangled through the back seat. A phone charger dangled from the broken dashboard. Her purse was gone, so was her phone. There were no signs of a body inside. Not even bone fragments, nothing. Detectives worked the theory that the car had been pushed or driven off the cliff, but from where? The cliffside path had no tire marks, but that didn't mean much after 2 years of wind, salt, and storms. Her father was furious. You're telling me she drove off that cliff and no one noticed? Not for 2 whole damn years. It didn't make sense. Ashridge Point wasn't a major tourist spot, but people hiked there often. Bikers, walkers, couples. Someone should have noticed. Someone should have smelled something. Unless it hadn't been there the whole time. Unless someone moved it later. That theory made the police uneasy. It suggested foul play, a cover-up. Detective Casey Rodriguez was assigned the case full-time. She was known for her patience and grit, worked robbery and missing persons for nearly 12 years. She read every page of Mariah's file, every witness statement, every tip. She asked to re-interview Erica and Jaden. Erica worked at a pharmacy now. She'd grown thinner, quieter, barely made eye contact. She said she remembered the night clearly, but had nothing new to add. "It's like she just disappeared," Erica whispered. One second she was swimming, and then she wasn't. Jaden was harder to pin down. He'd moved to a city 3 hours away, worked construction, and didn't return calls. When Rodriguez drove out to find him, he acted calm, too calm. "You think someone killed her?" he asked, leaning on his truck, arms crossed. Rodriguez didn't answer. "I think someone knows more than they said." Jaden scratched his jaw. "Well, it wasn't me." She noticed a twitch in his left hand. Anxiety, maybe, or something else. "When's the last time you talked to Chloe?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not since she dropped out." "Why not?" Jaden shrugged. "We just stopped. Things changed after that night." Rodriguez pressed harder. "Did she tell you anything back then?" "Something you didn't tell the police?" Jaden was quiet for too long. Finally, he looked away. "No, nothing." But she didn't believe him. Meanwhile, Chloe began having nightmares. Always the same one. She was standing on the cliff, staring down at the rocks, and Mariah was screaming from somewhere below. Screaming and screaming, but no matter how far she leaned, she couldn't see her. Then she'd wake up, drenched in sweat, chest tight. She hadn't told anyone what really happened that night. Not the whole truth. Not even close. At 2:17 a.m., hours after the police were called, Chloe had walked back to the path leading to the parking spot, alone. She needed air, needed to cry without Jaden and Erica hovering. That's when she saw it, Mariah's car, the driver's door open, the inside light on, and a man standing next to it. She didn't know him. He wore a black jacket, hood up. Looked in, she froze. He looked at her. She ran, never told anyone until now. Chloe returned to the station and sat across from Rodriguez. "There's something I need to say," she whispered, almost afraid of her own voice. Rodriguez leaned in. "Take your time." And Chloe told her about the man. The detective didn't say anything at first. Then she asked, "Why didn't you tell us this 2 years ago?" "Because I thought I imagined it. I didn't want to believe it was real. But now," Chloe's eyes filled with tears, "now I know it was." Rodriguez knew what this meant. Mariah might not have drowned. She might have made it back to her car. And someone else might have been waiting for her. That changed everything. She had the crime lab comb the car again. They dusted for prints, checked for blood, scanned for hair fibers. They found a partial print on the back bumper. Not Mariah's, not Chloe's, not anyone from the group, unidentified male. It was faint, corroded by time and salt, but still readable. It was a lead. And finally, after 2 years, something was starting to move. A cold case was warming up. But if Mariah had made it back to her car, if she never drowned, what happened between the beach and that cliff? And why was her phone never found? Rodriguez ordered a second search of the cliff area, deeper into the brush, past the drop, where debris could have been scattered. 2 days later, a searcher with a metal detector picked up a weak signal under a bush 50 yards from the cliff's edge. A phone, cracked, mud-covered, battery long dead. It was Mariah's, and on it was a video file. Detective Rodriguez stood over the evidence table, staring at the mud-streaked phone. It was scraped on all sides. The screen had spiderweb cracks running from the top corner, and it smelled faintly of salt and wet earth. The tech guy, Anthony, wore gloves as he worked carefully to open the back panel. He connected it to a recovery device and powered it through an external battery. They waited. The room was quiet, except for the low hum of the recovery equipment. "Anything?" Rodriguez asked. Anthony nodded slowly. "Give it a second." "Yeah, something's loading." A flickering screen lit up, and a grainy list of files appeared. Photos, notes, text messages. Then at the bottom, one video file. The timestamp, June 24th, 12:38 a.m. That was just minutes after Mariah had vanished. Rodriguez leaned in. "Play it." Anthony clicked. The screen dimmed, then lit up with motion. The image was dark, shaky. The camera pointed downward, showing a hand, Mariah's hand, reaching into her purse and pulling out her keys. She was breathing hard, as if she'd been running. In the background, faint voices could be heard. She turned the camera slightly, revealing the side of her car. Then came something chilling, a man's voice, deep and low. "You shouldn't be out here alone." The camera jerked up fast. The video turned into a swirl of sky and shadow. Then Mariah screamed. Not a long scream, just a sharp gasp as if someone had grabbed her. Then nothing. The video cut off. Rodriguez stepped back, heart pounding. She'd seen hundreds of crime scene photos, watched surveillance footage, heard victim recordings. But this hit her different. This was raw, real, close. She pressed her fingers to her lips. Send this to forensics. I want that voice isolated. Every background sound analyzed. Anthony nodded. Already on it. The tech team began enhancing the audio immediately. A second voice was detected, softer, unsure, possibly saying, "Wait," or "Mariah," just before the scream. Could it be Chloe or Jaden, Erica? Or was someone else there? Rodriguez turned to a whiteboard already covered in names and arrows. She circled back to the area near Ashridge Point. The cliff was only reachable by a dirt road and an old hiking trail. It had no lights, no cameras, but it had one key thing: privacy. She asked for traffic footage from gas stations near the trail, hoping something, anything, might show a car heading toward the cliffs that night. 2 days later, a blurry image came through from a broken camera mounted outside an old general store about 3 miles from the trailhead. The time was 12:52 a.m. It showed a dark sedan driving fast toward the cliffs. Mariah's car wasn't the only one out there. Rodriguez paid Chloe another visit. This time, she brought the video. "I need you to watch this," she said gently. Chloe shook her head, already tearing up. I don't want to. Chloe, please." You might recognize the voice. They sat in silence as the video played. When it ended, Chloe looked pale. "I don't know him," she said quietly. "You're sure?" She paused. "It sounds familiar, like I've heard it somewhere. Maybe school, maybe one of Jaden's friends. But I can't place it. That wasn't enough." Rodriguez needed more, so she turned to Erica. When shown the video, Erica didn't speak for almost a full minute. Her eyes stayed locked on the frozen frame. "I remember something," she said finally. "The night we were at the beach, after Mariah disappeared, I saw a guy standing on the cliff trail. I thought he was just a hiker. Can you describe him?" She bit her lip. "Tall, thin, hoodie pulled up. That's it." "Could you recognize his voice?" Erica closed her eyes. Maybe if I heard it again." Rodriguez was building a profile now. Tall, likely local, connected to one of the teens. And he had Mariah's phone, at least for a while. But what did he do after the attack? Why move the car? Why wait so long? Back at the lab, the voice techs made progress. The background sound, barely noticeable at first, was identified as a dog barking. But not just any bark, it was a distinct short double bark. Same rhythm every time. A field mic expert cross-referenced it with known dog sounds used in town's K9 units and nearby houses with security systems. Bingo. One house, located a mile east of Ashridge Point, had a dog known for that exact bark pattern. His name was Diesel, a German shepherd. The house belonged to a man named Nolan Price. Nolan, 22, had no criminal record. He worked at a local auto body shop and used to attend Crescent Bay High, graduated 2 years before Mariah's class. Rodriguez checked and found he'd played basketball with Jaden. They followed each other on Instagram. Nolan hadn't posted anything in over a year. Rodriguez paid him a visit. His house was quiet. No cars in the driveway. Diesel barked from the backyard, same bark, same rhythm. Nolan answered the door, shirtless, blinking like just woken up. "Yes," he said, voice deep and scratchy. Rodriguez's spine straightened. "It was him. I'm Detective Casey Rodriguez. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" He leaned on the doorframe, annoyed. "What about? Do you know Mariah Blake?" He shook his head too quickly. She watched him closely. "How about Jaden? You played basketball together, didn't you?" His eyes shifted. "A while ago, yeah." She tilted her head. "You drive a black sedan?" "Used to. Sold it last year." "To who?" He hesitated. "Friend of a friend." "Don't have the paperwork anymore." Rodriguez smiled slightly. "Mind if I look around?" "Actually, I do." That was enough. Later that day, she came back with a warrant. They searched the house, the garage, and the backyard. In the garage, under a tarp, they found the black sedan. Not sold, not even moved in months. The tires were flat. The trunk smelled of mildew and faintly of bleach. Inside the trunk, taped under the lining, was a torn piece of cloth. Red slightly sparkled. Mariah had been wearing a red swimsuit that night. News broke within hours. Breakthrough in Mariah Blake case. But they hadn't arrested Nolan yet. Rodriguez knew they had enough to bring him in, but not enough to keep him. She needed a confession. She needed him to crack. So she played the long game. They called him in for additional questioning. Put him in a cold room, no water. No clock. She stepped in after 4 hours. Mariah fought back, didn't she? Rodriguez said quietly. Nolan sat with his hands on the table, silent. You followed her to the beach. Maybe she rejected you before. Maybe she said something that night. His eyes twitched. Rodriguez slid the photo of the car onto the table. 2 years you thought you were safe. But someone always slips. He swallowed hard. But he said nothing. Not yet. She leaned in, voice low. We found your car, your print, her fabric, her phone. Still, he didn't speak. Rodriguez left the room. She had something more powerful than force, time, and truth. And now, for the first time in 2 years, it was finally closing in. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Detective Rodriguez didn't sleep that night. She sat in her office with her shoes off, feet sore, reviewing every word Nolan had said or refused to say. His silence didn't scare her. It confirmed what she already suspected. He was hiding something, and it was big. The evidence was piling up. The black car, the voice on the video, the piece of red swimsuit in the trunk, the print on the bumper, his connection to Jaden, his house near the cliffs. But as strong as it all looked, it still wasn't a confession. And the last thing Rodriguez wanted was to lose this case on a technicality. She needed to know what happened between 12:30 and 1 a.m. that night, 2 years ago. How had Mariah's car ended up off that cliff? And why? The next morning, Rodriguez returned to the station with a new strategy. She called in Jaden. He looked rough, baggy hoodie, red eyes, and shaky hands. Maybe from nerves, maybe from guilt. Jaden, she said once he sat down, you said you hadn't seen Nolan in years. He nodded. That's true. She leaned forward. So why did he text you 2 days after Mariah disappeared? Jaden blinked. What? She slid a printed screenshot across the table. It was a message from Nolan's old phone, recovered through a warrant. The message, don't talk, ever. You were never there. Sent to Jaden Thompson, June 25th, 1:42 p.m. Jaden's face went pale, his breathing changed. He stared at the paper like it was on fire. I didn't remember that. Rodriguez didn't speak. She let the weight of the moment press down. Jaden rubbed his hands together. We weren't trying to hurt her. What happened, she asked, calm and steady. Jaden hesitated. We didn't know Nolan was going to be there. He wasn't part of our plan. What plan? He dropped his head. Chloe and I, we knew Mariah was going away for college. She was going to leave us all behind. Chloe was scared of losing her, and I was angry. I liked Mariah more than a friend, but she didn't feel the same. She always made that clear. So you followed her? No, we just planned a dumb scare. Chloe said we'd prank her. Make her think someone was watching her. Stupid stuff. I didn't even want to go through with it. But Chloe told me Nolan owed her a favor. Said he'd help. Rodriguez felt her jaw tighten. You're saying Chloe brought Nolan into this? Jaden nodded slowly. I didn't know he was going to take it that far. I thought he'd hide in the trees or make creepy noises. That's it. Rodriguez stepped out of the room. Her head was buzzing. Chloe, the sweet, teary-eyed best friend. The girl who dropped out. The one with nightmares. She hadn't told them everything. She had controlled the story from day one. Rodriguez pulled Chloe in again. But this time she wasn't gentle. You lied to us, she said firmly as soon as Chloe sat down. Chloe looked confused. What do you mean? You said you didn't know who the man at the car was. You said you hadn't spoken to Nolan in years. But Jaden told us the truth. Chloe froze. Rodriguez pushed a photo toward her, Nolan standing beside Mariah's car that night, captured in the edge of a drone still frame. He wasn't just a stranger, he was part of your plan. Your plan to scare her. Chloe's eyes welled up. Her voice cracked. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Then what happened? Rodriguez demanded. Tell me everything now. Chloe's version came out in pieces. They had planned it for weeks. Chloe was jealous. Jealous that Mariah had everything. A scholarship, confidence, attention. Mariah had been growing distant too, talking about leaving town, cutting ties, focusing on her future. Chloe felt abandoned, so she thought she'd teach her a lesson. Something to shake her up, remind her who her real friends were. She asked Nolan to pretend to stalk her just for one night. "I didn't know he was dangerous," Chloe whispered, but she did know Nolan had a temper. He'd been suspended in school for shoving a teacher once. He'd been in fights, but she didn't care. "I just told him to wait by the car," she said, to scare her when she got back. "Did he know she'd be alone?" Chloe nodded. "That was the point." Rodriguez's stomach turned. "And when you saw him that night, standing by the car, why didn't you say anything?" "I was afraid," Chloe said. "I saw him. He looked at me. I saw something in his eyes. I didn't want to be next." With Chloe's full confession and Jaden's statement, Rodriguez had what she needed. A warrant for Nolan's arrest was issued that afternoon. The SWAT team moved in just before dusk. Nolan didn't resist. He stood quietly on his porch as the officers cuffed him. Diesel barked wildly from behind the fence. The neighbors stood outside, whispering. Nolan didn't say a word. He was charged with unlawful confinement, manslaughter, and obstruction of justice. Back at the station, Rodriguez sat alone with the full file in front of her. Photos, statements, video evidence, GPS maps, all of it, but one question still haunted her. If the plan was just to scare Mariah, how did she end up dead? Why drive her car off a cliff? Rodriguez needed one more thing before this puzzle could be complete. She needed Nolan to speak. In the interrogation room, Nolan stared at the wall. Rodriguez entered quietly and placed the video of Mariah on the table again. "You didn't mean to kill her," she said softly. He said nothing. "She fought you, didn't she? When you touched her, or when you blocked her car. Maybe you panicked." Still nothing. Rodriguez leaned closer. "You covered it up. You dumped her car off the cliff and ran." Nolan finally looked at her. His eyes were dark, empty. "She screamed too loud," he said flatly. Rodriguez didn't breathe. "I tried to shut her up. She wouldn't stop. She scratched me, so I grabbed her." "Ishoya." She hit the door hard. "What happened next?" "She wasn't moving. I checked her pulse. Nothing. So you moved the car." He nodded. "I waited a day, took her phone. Drove the car up the trail after midnight. I wanted it to look like an accident." Rodriguez sat still, heart heavy. "Where's her body?" Nolan stared at the table. "I didn't leave it in the car." Rodriguez's voice dropped. "Then where?" A long pause. "In the water," he said finally. "Farther down the coast. I waited her down." Rodriguez stood up, her throat dry. She had what she needed, but the story wasn't over. Not yet. Not until Mariah was brought home. The search for Mariah's body began before sunrise. Detective Rodriguez stood at the edge of the coastline, arms crossed, watching as boats moved slowly across the water. Divers were already preparing, their black wetsuits glinting faintly in the early morning light. The wind was cold, the sea was loud. There was no silence here, just the constant crash of waves against rock and the hum of engines overhead. Rodriguez wasn't one to get emotional on the job. But this morning she felt different. She wasn't just hunting for evidence. She was trying to bring a daughter home to her mother, to a family that had been frozen in place for 2 long years. Nolan's confession had given them a general area between the pier and the old shipwreck, he had said. That was nearly a 2-mile stretch of deep, rocky coastline. If he had really tied her down and dumped her into the water there, they'd need time, patience, luck. The dive team had marked several points of interest based on underwater sonar scans, large shadows, unusual shapes, places where debris gathered. They started with the closest one. By noon, they'd recovered a single shoe, red and sparkled, water-worn, but clearly a match to the pair Mariah had been wearing that night. Her mother confirmed immediately through tears. It was something, but not enough. They pressed on. Rodriguez kept checking her radio, pacing between updates. Helicopters scanned from above. Drones zipped across the cliffs. The water was unforgiving. Sharp rocks waited beneath the surface like teeth. The divers resurfaced every 45 minutes, shivering, exhausted, shaking their heads. Then at 3:42 p.m. the radio cracked. "Rodriguez, we have something. Sending coordinates now." She raced to the shoreline where the boat hovered, a diver waving from the deck. "It's her," he said, voice tense. "We found her," Rodriguez nodded, swallowing hard. "Any idea how far down?" "About 30 feet. Wedged between rocks. She's still intact." They brought her up slowly, gently, wrapped in a waterproof body bag. The coroner waited on the shore with a white van. A silent crowd had gathered nearby, reporters, townsfolk, even some old classmates who had come just to be present. No one spoke. When the divers reached land, the team moved quickly. No cameras were allowed near, no questions answered. Rodriguez stood by the van as they loaded Mariah inside. 2 years, 2 birthdays missed, 2 Christmases, 2 empty chairs at the dinner table. Now finally her family could say goodbye. At the station, Rodriguez sat across from Nolan once more. His expression didn't change when she told him they found the body. "She was exactly where you said," Rodriguez said. He didn't respond. "You tried to hide her." But the truth came out. Nolan leaned back in his chair, tired. "Doesn't matter now." "Oh, it matters," she said. "You changed lives. You destroyed a family." Nolan stared at the floor. "I never meant to kill her," he mumbled. "I just wanted to scare her." Rodriguez didn't let him off that easy. "But you didn't stop. Not even when she was bleeding, not when she collapsed. You made a choice, Nolan." She stood and walked toward the door. "And now the judge will make one, too." The town of Crescent Bay hadn't had a trial this big in over a decade. It drew media from all over the state. Camera vans lined the streets. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. People talked in coffee shops, whispered in grocery aisles, and argued over breakfast tables. Some called for life in prison. Others said Nolan didn't plan to kill her and should be charged with manslaughter. But Rodriguez didn't care about opinions. She cared about facts. The courtroom was filled on the first day. Mariah's parents sat quietly in the front row. Chloe was there too, alone, clutching a tissue. Jaden didn't show up. The prosecution began by showing the jury the video from Mariah's phone. Gasps filled the room. Some people turned away. Then came the timeline, the phone records, the fabric sample, the fingerprint, and finally, the confession. Rodriguez testified on the third day. Calm, clear, unshaken. "The evidence places Nolan Price at the scene," she said to the jury. "He was not only involved, he took her life. Then he tried to erase it. The defense tried to argue the incident was accidental, that Mariah hit her head in panic, and Nolan only dumped the car to protect himself. They painted a picture of a scared young man who made a terrible choice. But the jury wasn't buying it. Rodriguez could see it in their faces. And on the final day, when closing arguments were done and the court went silent, the jury didn't take long. 4 hours later, the verdict came in. Guilty. On all counts, Mariah's mother broke down in quiet sobs. Her father didn't move, just clenched his fists in his lap, staring ahead. Nolan showed no reaction as the judge sentenced him to 42 years in prison with no chance of parole for the first 30. After the trial, Rodriguez sat in her office, looking out the window at the sea. She finally felt like she could breathe again. But even then, some questions lingered. What if Chloe had never confessed? What if that drone footage had never been captured? What if Mariah hadn't had the presence of mind to record that video? So many little things had led to justice. Too many close calls. Too many chances for the truth to stay buried. Weeks later, a small memorial was held on the beach where Mariah had last been seen. It wasn't big. Just a few close friends, some candles, and the sound of the ocean. Rodriguez didn't attend, but she drove by and watched from her car. She saw Chloe standing alone at the edge of the sand. She didn't approach her. There was nothing left to say. The town would move on eventually. But the beach would never be the same. It wasn't just sand and water anymore. It was where a life had ended, where a secret had lived, and where justice, long delayed, had finally come crashing through the waves. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. 3 months after the trial, Crescent Bay was starting to feel normal again. The headlines faded, reporters left town, school resumed. Stores reopened without whispers trailing behind every customer. But Detective Casey Rodriguez couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. She went over the files again late one evening, not because she had to, but because something kept tugging at her mind. The video. Mariah's video. Rodriguez had watched it dozens of times, each time picking out a new sound, a new movement, a new shadow. But this time, something small caught her attention. The timing. The video was time-stamped at 12:38 a.m. Nolan claimed he dumped the car the following night after dark. But in the video, Mariah's keys were already in her hand. She was already at her car, meaning the car must have still been parked near the cliff shortly after midnight. That detail seemed to support his story, until Rodriguez checked the weather report. At 1 a.m. it started raining, hard. But when investigators pulled the car from the rocks 2 years later, it wasn't waterlogged the way it should have been if it had been sitting at the bottom of the cliff that entire time. Some corrosion, yes, but not what you'd expect from 2 full years exposed to rain, storms, and sea spray. That meant something simple but terrifying. Mariah's car wasn't pushed off the cliff that night, not right away. It must have been moved later. Rodriguez's stomach dropped. That meant someone else might have helped Nolan, or maybe someone moved it for him. And if so, they'd been quiet for 2 years. Until now. Rodriguez pulled Chloe in for one final interview. Chloe looked thinner, tired. Her voice was flat. She'd started attending therapy, according to her lawyer. She'd kept quiet since the trial. Rodriguez handed her a copy of the weather report and a new crime lab document. "These two things don't add up," she said plainly. Nolan said he dumped the car the next night, but the corrosion on the vehicle says otherwise. It had to have been stored somewhere, then pushed off that cliff later. Chloe blinked. So who helped him? Rodriguez leaned forward. "You said you were scared of Nolan, that you didn't go near him after the night Mariah died. But what if that wasn't true?" "I didn't help him," Chloe said quickly. Too quickly. Rodriguez didn't blink. "Are you sure about that? Because if we find your prints in his garage or in his car or even on Mariah's phone, that's obstruction, tampering, maybe even accessory." Chloe's face went pale. "I didn't know he was going to kill her," she said. "I'm not asking about that. I'm asking if you helped him cover it up." Chloe looked at the table, her fingers twitching. "It was one time," she whispered. "He called me the next night, told me he panicked, said the car was still parked near the trail. He was scared someone would find it." Rodriguez let her talk. "He asked me to meet him. I was shaking the whole time. We drove the car together real slow to his uncle's abandoned boat shed. It was off a dirt road near the harbor. He said we'd hide it there until we figured out what to do." Rodriguez's heart pounded. "And then? We left it, for weeks. Then one night he called again. Said he'd take care of it. I didn't ask what he meant." "But you knew," Chloe nodded. "Yeah, I knew." Rodriguez jotted down the address of the boat shed. Within hours, a team had it locked down. Inside, they found a faint oil mark on the floor, some dried mud, drag marks on the ground outside, a piece of red thread, same kind found in Mariah's swimsuit. That confirmed it. The car had been moved weeks after her death. The cover-up had been planned. Chloe had kept that secret this whole time. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. She arrested her for obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact. The town was stunned all over again. First Nolan, now Chloe. 2 people Mariah had once called her friends. News outlets returned. This time the headlines read, "Second arrest made in Mariah Blake case." Rodriguez gave one short statement to the press. This investigation was about more than finding out what happened. It was about holding every person accountable who chose to hide the truth. Chloe's case didn't go to trial. She pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, 3 years with possible release after 18 months. Her mother cried in court. Her father didn't attend. As she was taken away in cuffs, Chloe whispered, "I didn't mean for it to end this way." But intentions didn't change outcomes. Mariah was still gone. Afterward, Rodriguez requested time off. She spent a week away from the city, hiking alone near Redwood Bluff. She didn't answer emails, barely touched her phone. But on the final day, she visited Ashridge Point one last time. She walked the trail quietly, listening to the wind. The same trail Mariah had walked, barefoot, soaking wet, carrying her keys and her fear. Rodriguez stood at the edge and looked down at the rocks where the car had landed. Everything about this place felt heavy. Still, like time had stopped, she thought about the small choices that led to this. a prank, a lie, a delay in telling the truth. Rodriguez didn't cry, but her chest felt heavy as she turned away from the cliff. Justice had been served, but the story wasn't finished. One more chapter remained, and that was something only Mariah's family could write. 1 year later, the wind at Crescent Bay was softer now, calmer, as if the sea itself had finally quieted down after holding its breath for 2 long years. Detective Casey Rodriguez parked her car near the familiar beach. She stepped out slowly, taking in the view. The water glistened under the soft sunlight. Children played in the distance. Teenagers took selfies near the rocks. Life had returned. But something about today felt different. A small wooden bench now sat at the edge of the cliff near Ashridge Point. A bronze plaque had been drilled into it. The inscription was simple: in loving memory of Mariah Blake gone, but never forgotten. 1999-2023, Rodriguez sat down. The bench creaked under her, and the wind brushed lightly across her face. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. The case was over. Nolan Price was serving his sentence in a state prison. His appeal had failed. He would not see freedom until he was an old man. Chloe had been transferred to a minimum security facility upstate. She'd written a letter to Mariah's parents from jail, apologizing, explaining, but never excusing herself. It was honest, but nothing could undo the damage. Jaden had moved out of town. No one had seen him since the trial ended. Some said he went to live with an aunt in Arizona. Others claimed he dropped off the grid completely. Rodriguez didn't follow up. He wasn't a threat anymore. Just another young man who had to carry the weight of silence. Mariah's parents had asked for privacy during the first anniversary of her discovery. No public event, no speeches, just a quiet gathering at the beach. Close friends, family. Rodriguez was invited but chose to stay at a distance. She watched from afar that day near the trailhead. Mariah's mom placed flowers near the tide line. Her dad stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. No tiars, just a long stare at the horizon. Rodriguez respected that. Closure didn't always look loud. Sometimes it was just a quiet walk, a long exhale, or a silent morning by the sea. Still, people in town hadn't forgotten. The case had changed Crescent Bay. Teenagers walked in pairs now. Doors stayed locked. Beach parties had chaperones. Parents asked more questions. People looked twice at cars parked along the cliffs. There was a scar on the town, one that'd never fully fade. But maybe that was okay. Scars remind us of what we've survived. Rodriguez got a new partner in early spring, Detective Elijah Grant, younger, eager, full of energy. He asked a lot of questions. "You're the one who cracked the Mariah Blake case, right?" "I had help," she said simply. He didn't push. He learned quickly that Rodriguez didn't like being praised. She did her job. That was enough. Still, every once in a while, she'd catch him staring at her case files, reading the transcripts, studying the photographs. It wasn't curiosity, it was respect. She appreciated that. One rainy afternoon, months after the bench had been installed, Rodriguez got a letter. No return address. The handwriting was messy but familiar. It was from Jaden. He didn't say where he was. He didn't ask for anything. He just wrote 2 pages about guilt. He told her about sleepless nights, about memories he couldn't erase. He admitted to standing by, to being too afraid, to not stepping in when he should have. He ended the letter with one line: "Tell her parents, I'm sorry, I wish I could take it back." Rodriguez folded the letter and placed it in a folder with Mariah's name on it. She thought about passing it along to the Blakes, but she didn't, not yet. Some things needed time. 6 months later, Rodriguez received a call from Mariah's mother. "Detective," she said softly, "my husband and I are setting up a scholarship in Mariah's name for young women in Crescent Bay. We'd like you to speak at the launch ceremony." Rodriguez hesitated. She wasn't one for speeches, but this felt different. "I'd be honored," she said. The event was held in the school gym, the same school Mariah had once walked through. The room was filled with students, teachers, local leaders. The Blake family stood front and center, beaming with quiet pride. Rodriguez took the stage, cleared her throat, and looked out at the crowd. "I didn't know Mariah personally," she began, "but I knew the kind of person she was through her friends, her family, and the mark she left on this town. She was brave, sharp, full of life. She paused, voice steady. The day we found her car, something inside me shifted. Because behind every case number, every report, there's a story. And behind that story is a person. Someone with dreams, with people who love them. She glanced at Mariah's parents. This scholarship will help others build the future Mariah never got to finish. It's a powerful thing to turn tragedy into hope, to turn loss into legacy. The crowd applauded gently. Some wiped away tears. Mariah's mother nodded, hands clasped tightly in front of her. Rodriguez walked home that evening. The air was cool, the stars were out, and for the first time in years, the streets felt peaceful. She didn't look over her shoulder, didn't check her watch, didn't think about what ifs. She just walked. Back at home, she poured herself a glass of water and opened her desk drawer. Inside, neatly filed, was Mariah's case. 7 thick folders, every detail, every lead, every lie, every truth. She closed it gently, then reached for a marker. Across the front, in bold red ink, she wrote one word: closed. If you liked this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also another, to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.